to prove to you that they are struggling and give you my interpretation as to why they are struggling. When Israel decided to lash out against the Palestinians, the first thing they did was to try to paint October 7th as if it came out of nowhere. The starting point that they insisted of this conflict was that everything began on October 7th. They didn't want to talk about the week before. Forget 1948 for now. Forget 1967. Forget 1973. Yazidi, okay, we won't talk about 2021 when when you bombarded Gaza. You don't want to go that far in history. History bores you. Not you, but the other side. Then let's talk about 1 week. You can give me 1 week. 1 week before the genocide and ethnic cleansing began, before October 7th, Netanyahu stood in the United Nations with a smirk on his face, held up a map that he said would establish peace in the region. This was his Middle East vision to establish peace. And in this map, there was a very important omission. Something had been erased that Netanyahu believed needed to be erased in order to achieve his version of peace. What he erased was the state of Palestine. He erased the Palestinians completely from the map and told the United Nations, this is the solution to the Middle East. In the same breath, he said that a certain Arab state, because I should state that the opinions expressed by the speaker do not reflect those of the organization or the institution that invited me to speak. They did not ask what I would say. I did not tell them what I would say. And therefore, if they ever land in Jeddah, please do not send them back to Raleigh. So a certain Arab state, Netanyahu said that normalization of ties with a certain Arab state will be, quote, the greatest deal since the end of the Cold War. The Israeli ambassador to the UN then told Cannes Television on the same day, he was asked, will the right-wing government sign off on normalization of ties with an Arab state? And the Israeli ambassador said, quote, that normalization with this Arab state will mean the complete Arab abandonment of the Palestinians, and that will provide opportunities that the government will not be able to resist, and when they see those opportunities, they will sign off immediately on normalization of ties. In that same week, the week before, Netanyahu sat with a with another state, with a leader of another state. For the first time since this leader came to power since 2003, the opinions expressed are those of the root of me, not those of the organization. I'm being very careful because some people are a bit sensitive about, calling out the betrayal of Palestine. It's important that we don't call out the betrayal of Palestine because some people still need to do Hajj. And so Netanyahu sits for the first time since 2003 with a certain Muslim president, sometimes affectionately called the Sultan of the Muslim world, for the first time since 2003. And the Israelis take this picture and they show it to the Palestinians and they say, look, your Sultan now is sitting with our leader. Look, everybody is abandoning you. 2 months, I know, please forgive me, I'm stretching it, but 2 months, I know if nobody wants to go back too far, but 2 months before October 7th, the UAE, an Arab ambassador to the United States of America, tells Brookings Institute or Carnegie, one of the ones with the blue logo, I forgot which one it was. He's asked, has normalization of ties between your country and Israel achieved anything for the Palestinians? And he replies that normalization has achieved absolutely nothing for the Palestinians, and we have no leverage over Israel for the sake of the Palestinians. But that's not our business anymore. It's now the business of the countries that will normalize in future with the Israelis. But let me tell you how exciting it is, how much trade we now have with Israel and how many flights there are from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi to the Arab capital. I'm doing my best, wallahi, I'm trying. So Netanyahu returns to Tel Aviv the week before October 7th, absolutely convinced that this is the time to finally expand the borders of Israel, between quotation marks. It's a good tactic because there's a certain Arab state that has been trying to normalize in recent times. Their leader said we're getting closer every day to normalization, and one of the ways they've been normalizing is they don't call Israel an occupying power anymore in their statements. They refer to them as Israel between quotation marks so that they can tell the Israelis that they are recognizing them by calling them Israel, but they allow Muslim scholars to say that they're not recognizing Israel because they put it in quotation marks. So I will do that as well, they put it in quotation marks. Grammar is important in fatwa. I need to stop making those jokes. So Netanyahu returns to Tel Aviv and he begins to order a military build-up on the border with the Jenin refugee camp. For those who want the context of the Jenin refugee camp, in 2019, Netanyahu moved to try to annex the Jenin refugee camp, even while he was talking about normalization of ties with a particularly small Arab state. when he was trying to send his forces into Jenin, when Netanyahu was negotiating for normalization, he was planning to go into the Jenin refugee camp and annex it. But Donald Trump went to Netanyahu and told him, "Yeah, Jahil, why are you going to ruin it? We're on the verge of normalization with an Arab state. The first time we normalized, or second time, because Qatar, another Arab state, did it in '96 with the Economic Office. But the second time an Arab state normalizes ties without a peace agreement. Why would you ruin it by going into the Jenin refugee camp? Why don't you stop the annexation, at least temporarily, so that this leader can get the Islamic scholars to say that normalization is allowed, is halal, because it allows it to stop the annexation of the Jenin refugee camp." And Netanyahu said, "Okay, no problem." And they went to Washington, they signed the normalization agreement. Once they signed it, Netanyahu began again to try to annex Jenin, but unfortunately, or fortunately, Netanyahu was toppled from power. He couldn't annex Jenin refugee camp. But Naftali Bennett, who came after him, sent in his forces to the Jenin refugee camp in a desperate bid to annex it, but he failed to do so. Why? The IDF got too excited. They killed Shireen Abu Aqla, the Al Jazeera journalist, in broad daylight, who was an American citizen, and as a result, he could not continue his annexation of the Jenin refugee camp. He had to withdraw. This time Netanyahu believed now is the golden opportunity, because 3 of the major Muslim nations are seeking ties with Israel, and expansion of ties with Israel and normalization. If the Muslim nations are abandoning the Palestinians, let's go and take the Jenin refugee camp. They talk about October 7th as if everything began with it, without realizing Israel was preparing to invade the week before. That's why context is important. When Netanyahu went to Tel Aviv, he was convinced the Palestinians were done for, that in his lifetime he will finally be able to say, Israel from the river to the sea. That's what the flag means. The reason they're trying to ban from the river, from the sea, is because they want to say it for themselves. The 2 blue lines on that so-called flag, from the river to the sea.